Hello, survivors. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the story. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel. We appreciate it, and thank you in advance. Please leave the name of the city you're listening from in the comment section below. It helps us see our reach in the community. Let's start the story. Autumn had painted Gallatin National Forest in crimson and gold, the Montana sunset fading into twilight. I'd taken this job to escape. No traffic, no noise, just wind in the trees and the comforting isolation 30 feet above the ground. I was updating my evening report when I first noticed it, an odd glow on the horizon, flickering erratically. Not the steady burn of a forest fire, but something more volatile, more wrong. I reached for my binoculars, focusing on the southwest tree line. The vacation cabins in Moose Creek Valley were burning. My stomach dropped as I adjusted the focus. Dark silhouettes darted between trees, not the controlled movements of firefighters, but the frenzied sprinting of people in terror. Even from this distance, their panic was palpable. I grabbed my radio. Tower 6 to dispatch. Multiple structure fires in Moose Creek area. Possible emergency situation? Over. Static hissed back. I tried again, adjusting frequencies. Tower 6 to dispatch. Do you copy? There are civilians in danger down there. More static, then a broken voice cut through. All units, evacuation. Don't approach, containment breach. The transmission dissolved into garbled noise. I switched channels frantically. This is Tower 6 in Gallatin. I need immediate assistance at Moose Creek Cabins. A different voice responded, clearer but tight with fear. Stay where you are. Do not attempt rescue. They're not responding. When bitten. The transmission cut out. I stood frozen, watching as the glow spread. The town of West Pine, barely visible on a clear day, was now outlined in orange, pulsating like a wound. 8:02 p.m. I tried every emergency channel I knew. On the forestry band, I caught fragments. Voices talking over each other, words like quarantine, infection, and don't let them bite you. For the first time, my tower felt exposed rather than secure. I locked the trap door, something I'd never done before. By 8:30, fires bloomed across the landscape. The roads out of West Pine were jammed with headlights, a desperate exodus that gradually thinned as vehicles dispersed into the countryside. Then, one by one, the lights began to wink out. 9:17 p.m. The first scream carried on the wind, raw human terror slicing through the night. Through my binoculars, I spotted a figure stumbling down Ridgeline Trail, badly limping. Behind them, more shapes advanced with horrible purpose, not running but moving with a relentless, rhythmic determination that chilled me to the bone. The leader of the pursuing group had an awkward, tilted gait, head cocked at an impossible angle, one arm dragging uselessly, yet still moving with terrifying steadiness. Blood gleamed black in the moonlight across the front of what had once been a park ranger's uniform. When they caught the fleeing hiker, I lowered my binoculars. Some things you don't need to see up close. The screams stopped abruptly. 10:43 p.m. My radio crackled to life. Containment protocols ineffective, West Pine compromised, all personnel evacuate to designated safe zones. I scanned the valley with mounting dread. More fires had erupted closer to my position. Through the binoculars, I spotted a family running from their cabin, the parents dragging two small children toward an SUV. Behind them, silhouettes moved with that same distinctive broken-limbed shuffle I'd seen earlier. The family made it to their vehicle, but as they pulled away, their headlights illuminated the road ahead, blocked by a cluster of figures standing motionless in the path. The SUV swerved into the trees and disappeared from my view. 11:20 p.m. A helicopter flew over West Pine, searchlight sweeping back and forth. I grabbed a flare gun from my emergency kit and fired into the sky, a desperate red streak against the black. The helicopter continued on its course, either missing my signal or ignoring it. Midnight. The power went out across the valley. West Pine vanished into darkness, save for the sporadic glow of fires. My tower, running on solar batteries, became a lonely lighthouse in a sea of shadow. 12:37 a.m. I tried the radio again and caught a clear transmission. "This is National Guard Unit 87 on emergency broadcast. Any survivors? Identify yourself and location." My hands shook as I responded. "This is Tower 6, Gallatin National Forest. Fire lookout at observation point 6. Copy Tower 6. What's your situation?" "I'm alone, secure for now. I've seen fires, people running, something's hunting them." "Listen carefully," the voice commanded. "Biological containment failure at Carson Research Facility, 6 hours ago. Highly contagious pathogen affecting the central nervous system, causing extreme aggression, spread through bites, bodily fluids." My mouth went dry. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying stay in your tower. Anyone infected becomes hostile within hours, sometimes minutes depending on the wound. They don't respond to pain, don't recognize faces. We're establishing extraction points. But it's chaos right now. Are you armed?" "I have a rifle for bears." "Good, keep it ready. Do not approach anyone showing symptoms, disorientation, aggression, or physical trauma. Conserve food and water. We'll attempt extraction when possible." "How widespread is this?" A pause. "West Pine is lost. Bozeman is under emergency protocols. The infection is spreading faster than we can contain it." The radio fell silent. I sat heavily in my chair, the enormity of what was happening finally sinking in. 1:15 a.m. Movement near the base of my tower caught my attention. A figure stumbled into the clearing, moving with that distinctive, irregular gait. Then another emerged from the trees, and another, their heads swiveled in unison toward my tower, faces pale in the moonlight. I counted 5, then 10. By 2 a.m., at least 15 infected had gathered below, circling aimlessly. Some wore hiking gear, others pajamas or ordinary clothes. One, a woman in what had been an expensive North Face jacket, was missing an arm, yet seemed unbothered by the wound. Black fluid dripped from her tattered sleeve, leaving a trail on the ground. 2:47 a.m. The infected grew more active, some clawing at the base of the tower, others milling in widening circles. Through my binoculars, I studied their faces, jaws slack, eyes vacant yet somehow alert, skin waxy and pale. They moved like broken marionettes, joints bending at wrong angles, heads lolling, yet with an undeniable purpose in their movements. 3:30 a.m. A crash from below sent me lurching to my feet. One of the infected had thrown itself against a support beam. Then another copied the action. Not coordinated, but persistent. The tower shuddered slightly with each impact. I grabbed my rifle, checked the ammunition. 38 rounds. Enough to hold them off, but not indefinitely. My hands trembled as I loaded the chamber. 4:12 a.m. Through my binoculars, I spotted headlights on the forest access road. A truck driving recklessly fast, weaving around obstacles. Behind it, shapes spilled from the tree line in pursuit, too many to count. The truck skidded around a bend, then veered sharply, crashing into a ditch. Even from a distance, I could see the driver's side door was missing. The truck's headlights illuminated a grotesque parade of infected closing in from all directions. A figure burst from the passenger side, tall, wearing something bright red, and sprinted toward the hiking trail that led to my tower. The infected changed course, drawn by the movement. I had a decision to make. Use my rifle, giving away my position but potentially saving a life, or stay silent, invisible, and safe. The tower shuddered again as more infected threw themselves against the support beams below. Their collective weight and persistence had begun to take a toll on the structure. A low creaking sound rose from the wooden beams, subtle but unmistakable. If they kept at it through the night. The figure in red had made it to the base of the trail now, running flat out. Behind them, at least 20 infected followed, not sprinting but advancing with that same relentless pace that somehow seemed more terrifying than speed. I made my decision. I grabbed my rifle, slid open the window, and lined up a shot. The crack of the rifle shattered the night's silence. The lead infected crumpled. I chambered another round, fired again. A second body fell. The figure in red looked up, spotted me in the tower window, and changed course directly toward me. The infected, momentarily distracted by the gunshots, soon resumed their pursuit. I fired systematically, taking down the closest threats. 6 shots, 6 bodies on the ground. The rest continued forward, undeterred by the loss of their companions. The figure in red reached the base of my tower and began to climb the access ladder. Female? I could see now. A woman in a climbing jacket moving with desperate speed. "Hurry!" I shouted down. An infected in tattered hiking gear caught her boot. She kicked free, scrambling higher. More gathered below, reaching up with grasping hands, jaws working mechanically. I fired again, dropping the closest threats. The woman reached the hatch that led to my cabin. I unlocked it, rifle still ready, and helped her inside. She collapsed on the floor, gasping for breath. "Thank you," she managed between gulps of air. "They were right behind me." "You're not bitten?" I kept my distance, scanning for injuries. "No, close calls, but I'm clean." She sat up slowly, pushing sweat-matted hair from her face. "I'm Lena." "Ryan," I replied. "Fire lookout." We regarded each other, 2 strangers bound by catastrophe. Her red climbing jacket was stained with dirt and darker splotches. My own appearance was hardly better. I hadn't slept, hadn't changed clothes since the nightmare began. "What happened to you?" I asked. "Was on a solo climbing trip at Devil's Spine," she said, her voice steadying. "Heard screaming from a campsite below around sunset. Next thing I know, there's chaos everywhere. Made it to my truck, tried to reach the highway." She shook her head. "Roads were jammed, people abandoning vehicles running. Then I saw those things." 5:23 a.m. The tower shook more violently. Below us, the infected had begun throwing themselves against the support beams with increased vigor, stirred up by our voices and movement. Lena moved to the window, looking down at what used to be people. I thought it was some kind of drug at first, mass hallucination. But then I saw a ranger get bit. He turned in minutes, not hours. I told her about the National Guard transmission, the biological containment failure. "It escaped from a lab," she said flatly. "Of course it did." The tower groaned as another infected slammed against a support beam. The sound of splintering wood rose from below. "How sturdy is this place?" Lena asked, worry etching her features. I surveyed my home of 5 months, the weather-beaten boards, the old supports, the narrow windows. Built to withstand wind and storms, not a concentrated assault. "Sturdy enough," I lied. "For now." Dawn was breaking, pale light creeping over the eastern mountains. In the growing illumination, I could see just how many infected had gathered below, at least 30, pressing against the tower's base with mindless persistence. The structure groaned again. A support beam had begun to splinter. We had hours, maybe less. 5:47 a.m. The dawn light revealed the full extent of our predicament. The support beam at the northwest corner had developed a hairline crack, the wood splintering under relentless pressure. Below us, the infected continued their assault. Over 30 of them now, pressing against the base of the tower with mindless determination. Each impact sent tremors through the structure. "We need to divert them," Lena said, her climbing background evident in how quickly she assessed structural weaknesses. "If that beam gives way." I nodded grimly. The tower, designed to withstand Montana's harshest weather, hadn't been built to endure a concentrated attack. My throat tightened at the thought of the structure collapsing, dropping us into the waiting mass below. "The rifle," I said. "We could fire it from the opposite side, draw them away from the damaged beam." Lena considered this. "Temporary fix. Noise attracts them, but once it stops, they'll go back to whatever caught their attention last." I opened my logbook, flipping to my inventory list. Flares. I have 3 emergency flares left. Her eyes lit up with understanding. "Throw one far from the tower. They follow the light and sound. And it gives us time to reinforce the beam." I unlatched my toolbox, evaluating what materials we had to work with. 6:10 a.m. I leaned out the window on the tower's southeast side, the direction furthest from our damaged support, and launched a flare. It arced through the early morning sky, leaving a trail of crimson smoke before landing about 70 yards away in a clearing. The effect was immediate. The infected, as one, turned toward the sudden light and sound. They abandoned their assault on the tower, shambling toward the flare with single-minded focus. Fingers reaching, jaws working mechanically, they converged on the sizzling light. "Now," Lena said. We moved to action. From my maintenance supplies, I retrieved metal brackets, screws, and a cordless drill. Lena had already identified a steel support rod and several planks of spare lumber stored under my bunk. "I'll need to go underneath," I explained. "There's a maintenance platform halfway down the tower. I can reach the beam from there." Lena's expression tightened. "You'll be exposed. No choice. If that beam fails, we're both dead." She considered, then nodded. "I'll keep watch. Signal if they start coming back." I grabbed my tools, shoved the rifle into Lena's hands, and descended through the trap door onto the exterior ladder. The maintenance platform was 15 feet below my cabin, still a good distance from the ground, but much closer to danger than I wanted to be. The wood creaked ominously beneath my feet as I stepped onto the platform. Up close, the damage was worse than I'd estimated. The beam had split nearly halfway through, the crack widening with each subtle movement of the tower. I worked frantically, drilling pilot holes for the brackets, my fingers clumsy with fear and rushed movement. From above, Lena hissed, "Ryan, 3 coming back!" I glanced down. 3 infected had lost interest in the dying flare and were wandering back toward the tower. One, a heavy-set man in flannel pajamas, tilted his head up, empty eyes locking onto my movement. His mouth opened in a silent snarl and he lurched forward, followed by his companions. "Almost done," I called back softly, tightening the final bracket. The repair wasn't pretty, but it would hold, at least temporarily. The infected reached the tower base just as I scrambled back up the ladder. Lena helped pull me into the cabin and we secured the trap door. Below us, they resumed their assault, throwing themselves against the support beams with mindless persistence. "How long will it hold?" Lena asked. I wiped sweat from my forehead. "Hours, maybe a day if we're lucky." Her eyes met mine, a silent understanding passing between us. We needed a more permanent solution. 7:25 a.m. Lena paced the small confines of my cabin, stopping occasionally to peer out the windows at the growing horde below. I tried the radio again, scanning every emergency frequency. "This is Tower 6 in Gallatin National Forest. Structure compromised. 2 survivors in need of immediate extraction. Anyone copy?" After several attempts, a response crackled through, fragmented but intelligible. "Tower 6, holding extraction points. Overwhelming numbers. Resources stretched." I pressed the transmit button. "Our position is failing. Need immediate evacuation." "Understand. Helicopters deployed. Priority medical facilities. Stand by." Stand by. A polite way of saying we weren't a priority. I set down the radio, meeting Lena's questioning gaze. "They're overwhelmed," I explained. "Evacuating critical infrastructure first." She nodded. Disappointment evident, but not surprise. "We need more information. I have no idea what's happening beyond what I've seen." I retrieved my binoculars and scanned the valley. The smoke from West Pine had thinned, but the town showed no signs of activity, no movement, no vehicles, only the occasional flicker of fires still burning. The sky remained eerily empty, save for a distant helicopter moving north too far to signal. "Here," I handed the binoculars to Lena. "What do you see?" She studied the landscape, her breath catching. "The main road from Bozeman. It's completely backed up, cars abandoned." She adjusted the focus. "Wait, southeast near Ridge Trail, people moving." I took the binoculars, following her direction. A group of survivors, maybe 5 or 6, were making their way along the hiking trail, carefully navigating around wandering infected. They moved with the deliberate caution of people who understood the danger, keeping low and quiet. "They're heading west," I observed, "away from population centers." "Smart," Lena murmured. "The infection must be spreading faster in cities." 8:40 a.m. The sun climbed higher, bringing with it a deceptive tranquility. Birds still sang, insects buzzed. The forest continued its life cycle, indifferent to the human catastrophe unfolding within it. From our vantage point, we could almost pretend that normality existed somewhere beyond the circle of infected surrounding our tower. That illusion shattered when a military jet streaked overhead, breaking the sound barrier with a thunderous crack that sent birds scattering from the treetops. The infected below became agitated, their collective moaning rising in volume as they turned their vacant gazes skyward. Lena, who had been inventorying our supplies, looked up sharply. "That's not a commercial aircraft." I shook my head. "Military, flying too low and too fast. Reconnaissance? Or worse," I said quietly. The implication hung between us. If the infection was spreading beyond containment, extreme measures might be implemented. 9:13 a.m. We shared a meager breakfast, canned peaches and stale granola from my supplies. Lena told me more about herself between careful bites. She'd been a climbing instructor in Boulder, Colorado, taking a solo vacation to decompress after a difficult season teaching beginners. "Came for the solitude," she said with grim irony. "Got more than I bargained for." I understood all too well. My own retreat to this tower had been an escape from personal failures, a broken engagement, a career that hadn't panned out, a general disillusionment with the noise and pressure of modern life. Now, watching civilization crumble from my isolated perch, I found myself desperately missing what I'd so eagerly left behind. 10:21 a.m. A new sound joined the ambient moaning of the infected, the rhythmic thrum of helicopter rotors. I scrambled to the window, scanning the sky until I spotted it, a Black Hawk moving with purpose toward the western edge of the forest. "Military extraction," I breathed, grabbing the radio. "This is Tower 6 to approaching helicopter. We have a damaged structure with 2 survivors in need of immediate evacuation. Do you copy?" The response came immediately. "Tower 6, this is Nighthawk 7. We are conducting a targeted extraction at Waypoint Delta, currently at maximum capacity. Mark your position and maintain radio contact. We'll dispatch retrieval when resources permit." Lena had already grabbed the last 2 flares from my emergency kit. Without hesitation, she launched one through the window. It soared high, trailing bright smoke across the clear blue sky. The helicopter banked slightly, acknowledging our signal. "Copy your position, Tower 6. Stand by." The Black Hawk continued on its original course, disappearing beyond the western ridge. The infected below had once again been stirred by the flare and the helicopter's noise, their agitation increasing as they milled around the tower base. "They saw us," Lena said, a flicker of hope in her voice for the first time. I nodded, not voicing my concerns about when resources permit. The helicopter hadn't changed course, hadn't even slowed down. Whatever their primary mission was, it took precedence over 2 stranded survivors in a compromised fire tower. 11:47 a.m. The tower shuddered more violently. Despite my reinforcements, the structure's integrity was failing under the persistent assault. The infected had grown to nearly 40 in number, their combined weight and relentless pushing taking a toll. "We need another plan," Lena said, watching as a new crack formed in one of the floor supports. I surveyed our dwindling options. The rifle had 15 rounds left, 1 flare remaining, food and water for perhaps 3 days if we rationed carefully, and below us, a growing sea of infected that showed no signs of losing interest in our presence. "The helicopter," I said finally. "If they're establishing extraction points, we need to reach one." Lena looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Through them?" She gestured to the mass below. "Not through. Over." I pointed to the surrounding trees. "The tallest pines are close enough. If we could reach one." Her expression shifted from disbelief to calculated assessment, the look of a climber measuring a challenging route. "The north side," she said after studying the positioning. "That pine is maybe 8 feet from the tower. The branching starts about 20 feet down from our level. Difficult jump, but possible," I finished. "For someone with climbing experience, she emphasized. "I could make it. Secure a rope. Create a traverse line for you to follow." Before I could respond, the radio crackled to life. "Tower 6, Nighthawk 7. Be advised, we've completed primary extraction mission and are returning to base for refuel. We can divert to your position for emergency evacuation. ETA 20 minutes. Prepare for rooftop extraction. Can you confirm your situation?" I grabbed the radio. "Nighthawk 7, Tower 6. Structure failing under pressure from approximately 40 infected. 2 survivors, no injuries. We'll be ready on the roof." "Copy that, Tower 6. 20 minutes." Lena and I locked eyes, a new energy coursing through us. 20 minutes. We could hold out for 20 minutes. "The roof access," I said, pointing to the small hatch in the ceiling. "We'll need to clear it. Make sure it opens properly." Lena nodded, already moving to position a chair beneath the hatch. She climbed up, testing the latch mechanism. It groaned with disuse but opened, revealing a small maintenance platform above the cabin. 12:05 p.m. The tower gave its most violent shudder yet. Something major had failed in the structure. I could hear wood splintering, metal brackets wrenching free. We had less time than we thought. "We need to move to the roof," I said, gathering essential supplies. Water, the radio, the rifle, my logbook. The cabin floor could give way. Lena slipped through the roof hatch first, then helped pull me through. The maintenance platform was barely 4 feet square, surrounded by a simple metal railing, designed for occasional inspections, not as a refuge. Below us, the infected had sensed our movement. Their moaning intensified, their collective assault on the tower growing more frenzied. I could feel the entire structure swaying slightly now, the damaged supports beginning to fail. 12:13 p.m. The distant thrum of helicopter rotors reached us. Lena already had the last flare in hand, ready to signal our position. "Wait," I cautioned. "Save it until they're closer. We might need it if they miss us." The minutes crawled by with excruciating slowness. Each slight movement of the tower sent my heart racing. The wood creaked continuously now, the sound of imminent structural failure. Below, the infected continued their mindless assault, drawn by our presence and movement above. 12:18 p.m. The helicopter appeared over the eastern ridge, moving purposefully in our direction. Lena raised the flare, prepared to launch. At that exact moment, the tower gave a sickening lurch. One of the main supports had finally snapped completely. The entire structure tilted several degrees to one side, nearly sending us sliding off the small platform. "Now!" I shouted. Lena fired the flare, its bright trail cutting across the sky directly over our position. The Black Hawk altered course slightly, homing in on our signal. I could see it clearly now. Side door open. A crew member in tactical gear visible in the opening. The radio crackled. "Tower 6, we have visual. Your structure appears critically compromised. Prepare for immediate extraction." The tower groaned again, tilting further. The metal railings around our platform bent under the pressure of the shifting angles. We clung desperately to what remained, watching as the helicopter approached. It hovered 30 feet above us, rotors whipping the air into a frenzy. The downdraft hit us like a physical blow, threatening to tear us from our precarious perch. A rope ladder unfurled from the open door, swinging wildly in the turbulence. "You first!" I shouted to Lena over the deafening rotor wash. She shook her head. "The tower won't hold, together or not at all." The helicopter dipped lower, the crew member gesturing urgently for us to climb. The ladder's end was still a good 8 feet above our platform. We would need to time our jump perfectly to catch it. The tower gave another violent lurch. Through the platform's gaps, I could see one of the support beams completely torn away, the others bending beyond their breaking point. We had seconds, not minutes. "On 3!" I shouted, gripping Lena's hand. 1, 2. The platform dropped suddenly, the entire north side of the tower collapsing. The world tilted crazily as our perch gave way. Lena and I jumped in desperate unison, hands outstretched toward the swinging ladder. My fingers closed around a rung, the impact nearly tearing my shoulder from its socket. Next to me, Lena caught the ladder as well. her climbing strength evident in how securely she held on. Below us, the tower folded in on itself, collapsing into a heap of broken lumber and twisted metal, directly into the mass of infected. "Climb!" the crew member shouted from above. "Now!" We ascended the swaying ladder as quickly as our exhausted bodies allowed. When we reached the door, strong hands pulled us inside. I collapsed onto the metal floor, lungs burning, muscles screaming in protest. The crew member, a young woman with medic emblazoned on her helmet, immediately began checking us for injuries. Satisfied we weren't hurt, she handed us each a bottle of water and headsets to communicate over the rotor noise. "Perfect timing," she said, her voice tinged with adrenaline-fueled humor. "Another minute and we'd have been plucking you from the trees." Through the open door, I could see my tower, my home for the past 5 months, now a shattered ruin. The infected swarmed over the wreckage, still driven by whatever primal instinct compelled them to hunt anything living. "Where are you taking us?" Lena asked through the headset. "Fob Alpha," the medic replied. "Forward operating base established at Bozeman Airport. It's the primary evacuation center for this region." "How bad is it?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Beyond what we've seen?" The medic's expression grew somber. "Major cities are lost. Infection rate is unprecedented. Rural areas are holding out better, but communication infrastructure is failing. Military is establishing safe zones, but it's..." She paused. "It's not good." The helicopter banked, heading east toward Bozeman. Through the window, I could see columns of smoke rising from multiple locations across the landscape. On the highways below, abandoned vehicles created metallic rivers frozen in time, and everywhere small figures wandered aimlessly, people who weren't people anymore. "What caused this?" Lena asked. The medic shook her head. "Above my pay grade. All I know is it started at Carson Research, spread faster than anyone predicted. The symptoms develop differently depending on transmission method. Direct fluid contact, bites, turn people in minutes. You two should be fine given your isolation. Small comfort, but I'd take it." 1:35 p.m. The helicopter approached Bozeman Airport, now transformed into a military installation. Barriers had been erected around the perimeter, guard towers positioned at regular intervals. On the tarmac, helicopters and transport planes unloaded supplies and personnel while civilians huddled in processing areas. We touched down near a medical tent. As the rotors slowed, the medic ushered us toward a decontamination area where workers in hazmat suits waited with handheld scanners. "Standard procedure," she explained. "Thermal imaging to check for fever, the first symptom." We submitted to the scans, then were directed to separate processing stations. Before Lena was led away, she turned to me, gripping my hand briefly. "Thank you," she said simply, "for the tower, the rifle, everything." I nodded, finding it difficult to speak past the lump in my throat. "Maybe I'll see you inside." "Count on it," she replied, a weary smile touching her lips before she disappeared into the crowd. A soldier guided me to a registration area where my information was recorded in a database. I was issued a temporary ID card, a hygiene kit, and assigned to Shelter B7. As I moved through the processing center, fragments of conversation reached me, snippets of the wider catastrophe I'd witnessed from my isolated perch. Denver completely overrun, communications down across 6 states, National Guard falling back from Minneapolis, power grid failing in the northwest sector. Reality settled over me like a physical weight. This wasn't a localized incident, not a containment failure that would be resolved in days or weeks. This was something else entirely, the collapse of the world I'd taken for granted. I found myself standing at the entrance to Shelter B7, a repurposed airport hangar now filled with rows of cots. Hundreds of shell-shocked survivors moved through the space like ghosts, their faces bearing the same stunned expression. These were the lucky ones, the evacuated, the saved, for now. A military officer was addressing a group near the center of the hangar, her voice carrying over the ambient noise. "Safe zone protocols in effect. Perimeter secure. Extraction teams are still operating, but resources are limited. Our priority is maintaining this facility as a staging area for evacuation further north. Anyone with medical, military, or technical experience should report to Station Alpha for assignment. All others, please remain in your designated areas until... I stopped listening, my eyes drawn to the massive windows along the hangar's upper level. From there, I could see the airport perimeter, the barricades, the armed personnel, and beyond them, the spreading chaos. Smoke rose from Bozeman itself, less than 3 miles away. Traffic had bottlenecked on every visible road, abandoned vehicles creating metal graveyards, and at the edges of the perimeter, figures had already begun to gather, just like at my tower. Only this time, there was nowhere higher to climb. I turned away from the window, scanning the sea of faces for Lena. Instead, I locked eyes with a National Guard soldier whose 1,000-yard stare told me everything I needed to know. This facility, for all its impressive security and military presence, was just another temporary refuge in a world rapidly running out of safe places. I had watched civilization burn from my tower. Now I would watch it collapse from ground level. The thought settled over me with cold certainty. The fire had only just begun to spread.